Chapter 12. I was still on the beach later that day, gathering limpets. Sean and his brothers were gone. The Karach was gone, too. Gone to pay for the Mallon's rent from last year. Gone, not even for Cunningham to use. What would he want with the sea, and the cold, and the aching hard work, Liam had said? What would he want with the danger? Devlin had locked it up with chains on the pier in the harbor. It would be there, with the tar and the canvas drying and cracking until great holes appeared in the crotch where it stood away. It wouldn't be the first time. There were others there waiting for the owners to pay the rent they owed and get them back, but it never happened. But I couldn't think of the crotch now. I had to eat something right away. I couldn't wait for the hen that Celia would cook. I didn't even want to think about that hen. What we were doing would not be a good idea in the end. It would mean one less egg every day. I imagined a mountain of eggs, each of them sizzling in a little pan, gone, like Mallon's Karach. And then I thought about the limpets sloshing around in a pail of seawater, slimy, cold, poor people's food, we called them, last hope. It was milk I wanted, a sea of milk with great lumps of potatoes, an ocean of milk to drink until I was full. Anna. Would she trade me a cup of milk for the limpets in my pail? I ducked into Anna's doorway, thinking about the first time I had gone into her house. I had edged my way into the dimness, peering into the corners, ready to run if I saw one of the she, her hair long, her fingers bony, watching me. But Anna's house was like ours, a hearth with banked-up ashes, a bed of straw, a three-legged stool. There was more, a table covered with dry pieces of moss and buttercups, tiny bits of faded green and brown from the plants around Maiden Bay. I set the pail of limpets down on the floor. Dia Dwight. Without my asking, she lifted the pail of milk in the corner, a small pail. With milk in the bottom, she poured it into a wooden cup. The milk still had a bit of froth on top. It was creamy with bits of yellow fat, even though the cow was thin as a rail. I closed my eyes. Suddenly I felt weak. If I had to watch her put the cup to her mouth and drink that milk, I would lie down on the floor and not get up again. Anna stopped pouring, then looked at the cup. She poured in a bit more until the milk was almost to the top, a sea of white surrounded by the rim of the cup. And she gave it to me. Holding my hands with her own, lifting the cup to my mouth, I had never tasted anything better. Leaves of dulse, a bit of meat shredded into soup on Christmas Day, the sticky red candy that Da had brought us after the harvest one year were nothing like this sweet milk. I didn't stop drinking until the cup was empty, and I began to think about Anna's dry hands holding mine. She was so small I had to look down at her, down at the little white cap on her head, the thick creases across her forehead, the faded blue eyes, and the folds of skin. I ran my tongue over my lips, feeling the last drops of milk as she took the cup and hung it on the hook over the hearth. How could I have ever been afraid of her? The Madra is gone, she said. Gone? Maeve? How could that be? Maeve with her ears flying, her tail waving, Maeve protecting us at Cunningham's stream. I don't know what happened to her. How sad Anna looked. She shook her head, then went to the table to chop a pile of nettles. These will make a good soup, she said. The Mallons lost their Karach. She looked up at me quickly. Because of the shed they built, she asked. Devlin raised the rent. They couldn't pay. Yes. And maybe that they will lose their house. I nodded. No Karach meant no fish. If they couldn't sell the fish or eat the fish, it was too much to think about. Anna was leaning on the end of the table, her stick propped up next to her. The English want us out of here. She raised one shoulder. They want our land for sheep. They want it for themselves. You will see. They will offer little help when we starve this winter. They will put us out on the road without a care. You sound like Granda, I said. Yes. Her back was toward me now. She reached for bits of green, mixing them with something else. This is good for toothaches, she said, staring up at the bottle as she filled it. By the time I remembered the limpets floating around in the pail by the doorway, and I owed those to Anna too for the milk, I went outside and came back with the pail, water sloshing. One hand on the table, she pushed at the pail with one bare toe, greenish-brown water, a few strands of seagrass, and limpets moving gently. Fuafar, she said, and we both laughed. They are for you, I said. She looked at me, eyes narrowed. My son, Tig. He was the cliff fisherman, I said, suddenly realizing. He would go down on the strand and bring back... I leaned forward to listen, thinking about the story of Tig. A rope slung around his waist, whipping out and down, and because he reached out too far, the wind had pulled him off the cliff. Anna stopped speaking and put up her hand. I heard it too. Voices calling. Voices calling Nory. Nory. That was Celia. Nory. Sean read. Nory. Even Patch. Something was wrong. Was it Granda? I backed away from Anna at the table. Take the limpets, Anna said. I shook my head. For you. I have enough, she said. Nory. One voice started as soon as the other had stopped. Sean's was the deepest. Celia's a little higher. Patch's baby voice. I picked up the pail by the wire handle and ducked out the doorway, waving my other hand so they could see me across the field. But when they did, they started to run. Hurry! They called. I followed them, leaving the pail in back of the stone wall where no one could find it. Then I flew across the field so I could catch them before they turned down to our house. But instead they were following the road to Ballally.